Welcome back, dear friend. Tonight, we're embarking on a journey through one of the most fascinating and influential civilizations in human history, the story of Greece. From myths whispered around ancient fires to the rise of powerful city-states, from golden ages of philosophy and art to the struggles of wars and empires, Greece has left an eternal mark on the world. So before you get too comfortable, take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if you enjoy the type of content that merges myth and mystery. And hey, let us know from where you are watching and what time it is for you right now. Sometimes our stories are better than sleep, and other times they make you dream louder. It's time now to dim the lights, turn on a fan for some noise, and let's cover what we have for tonight together. Close your eyes now, dear friend, and let your mind drift far back through the centuries, beyond the clatter of modern life, beyond the great empires of Rome, beyond even the dazzling temples of classical Athens. We travel together into the mists of deep antiquity, where the first sparks of Greek civilization flickered into being. This is not a land of marble yet, nor of philosophers debating in the agora. This is an older Greece, quieter, raw, and mysterious, a Greece shaped by the sea, by rugged mountains, and by the unyielding rhythm of the earth. Imagine the map of Greece as we know it today, a jagged hand of land reaching into the Mediterranean, with fingers of peninsulas stretching outward and countless islands scattered like stepping stones across the waves. Now picture it not as it is now, but thousands upon thousands of years ago, when small human communities began to gather in this landscape. There were no grand cities, no monumental architecture, no written language yet. Life was simple, bound to the cycles of nature. People farmed small plots of land, herded goats and sheep across rocky hills, fished in the bright waters, and looked up at the stars in awe. The earliest Greeks did not call themselves Greeks. In fact, the very idea of Greece as one unified culture was far in the future. Instead, there were scattered tribes and families living in isolated valleys cut off by mountains or settled along the shores. What connected them, even then, was the sea. The Aegean Sea was a highway rather than a barrier, allowing contact between distant islands and coastal settlements. This geography gave birth to a culture that was always outward-looking, curious, and eager to trade. When we think of civilization, we often imagine writing, laws, cities, and monumental buildings. But the dawn of Greek civilization began more humbly with the Neolithic villages that dotted the land around 7000 BCE. These communities farmed wheat and barley, tended olive trees, and domesticated animals. Pottery, decorated with simple geometric designs, began to appear. It was not art for show, but for life. Jars to store grain, bowls for meals, vessels for oil and wine. Even here, in these modest beginnings, we see the first whispers of what would later become central to Greek identity, an appreciation for beauty, even in ordinary things, a tendency to turn the practical into the poetic. Archaeology gives us glimpses of these early lives in sites such as Sesklo and Dimini in Thessaly. The remains of houses and tools tell us of small but organized communities. Mud brick homes were built close together, often around a central courtyard. People shared labor, celebrated harvests, and buried their dead with simple rituals. These were the seeds, the faint outlines of what much later would bloom into grand religious ceremonies and vast city festivals. But the dawn was not just about survival, it was also about imagination. Early Greeks began to form myths, even before we know them as myths. They looked at the sun rising each morning and wondered if it was a god steering a blazing chariot. They saw the restless sea and imagined a divine force beneath the waves. The land itself seemed alive, mountains with spirits, caves as entrances to hidden realms, rivers that could bless or curse. These beliefs were not yet organized into the pantheon of Olympian gods we recognize, but the seeds of mythology were already sprouting in the Greek mind. The land itself shaped this early history. Greece is mountainous, with only small areas of fertile plains. This meant no single kingdom could easily dominate all of it in the earliest times. Instead, independent communities developed their own ways of life. They were small but resilient, and their independence would later evolve into the fiercely autonomous city-states, the polis, that defined Greek culture. Even in the dawn, the spirit of individuality, of self-rule, was being forged in the stone and soil. The people of early Greece were also shaped by contact with neighbors. The Aegean lies between Europe, Asia, and Africa, and trade routes crossed these waters from the very beginning. The earliest Greeks exchanged goods with Anatolia, with the islands of the eastern Mediterranean, perhaps even with Egypt. These contacts brought new tools, new ideas, and new influences. Slowly, the Greeks absorbed them and made them their own. Around 3000 BCE, we see the first truly complex societies in the Aegean, the Minoans on Crete, and later the Mycenaeans on the mainland. But before we rush to them, it is worth pausing here at the dawn, in the quiet world of the Neolithic and early Bronze Age, and imagine what it felt like to live then. Picture yourself in a small Greek village thousands of years ago. The night air is cool, the sound of cicadas humming through the hills. Families gather around firelight, sharing bread, olives, and goat's milk. The elders tell stories, perhaps of spirits in the mountains, or heroes who fought beasts in the dark woods. Children listen wide-eyed, while stars blaze above more brightly than we can see today. This is a world without writing, so memory is everything. Songs and tales pass from mouth to mouth, generation to generation, slowly weaving the fabric of what will become Greek culture. Over time, these stories will grow, merge, and evolve into the grand myths of Zeus, Hera, and Apollo. But for now, they are simpler, rawer, fragments of awe and fear at the mysteries of nature. The dawn of Greek civilization was also the dawn of the relationship between humans and the sea. Fishing boats ventured further and further out, bringing back not only food, but also contact with distant islands. The sea was unpredictable, sometimes calm and generous, sometimes raging and cruel. To live in early Greece was to learn humility before the forces of nature, to respect the rhythms of wind and wave. That humility would echo later in Greek thought, a recognition that human beings, however clever, were always at the mercy of forces greater than themselves. And so, little by little, life grew more complex. Metalworking arrived, first with copper, later with bronze. Villages became more organized, houses sturdier, tools sharper, Trade expanded, wealth accumulated, and with it, new social classes began to form. Chiefs or leaders emerged, perhaps chosen for their strength in war or their ability to manage trade. These early hierarchies foreshadowed the kings and aristocracies that would dominate later eras. But even here, there was something unique about the Greek spirit. Power never became absolute. Communities remained small, decisions shared. This early balance between leadership and community life may have been the faint, distant ancestor of democracy itself. As we close our eyes and drift further into this ancient dawn, we can sense the quiet stirrings of something extraordinary. The people of these rocky hills and scattered islands did not know they were building the foundation of Western civilization. They only knew the rhythm of their days: planting, harvesting, fishing, crafting, singing, worshipping. Yet from these simple beginnings would rise epics that inspired the world, philosophies that still shape how we think, and art that continues to move us millennia later. The dawn of Greek civilization is not measured in monuments or battles, but in the slow, steady unfolding of human imagination. It is a story of how ordinary people, living close to the land and the sea, began to dream of gods, of heroes, of communities greater than themselves. And in those dreams, Greece was born. Let us drift now, dear friend, from the rugged hills and modest villages of the dawn into the glittering waters of the Aegean, where one island, more than any other, began to shine with remarkable brilliance. That island was Crete, and there, more than 4,000 years ago, a civilization emerged so rich, so mysterious, and so beautiful that it has captured imaginations ever since. We call them the Minoans. The name itself is a gift from later generations, taken from the mythical king Minos, who ruled a labyrinth of twisting corridors and imprisoned the monstrous Minotaur. Whether there was ever such a king, we cannot say for certain, but the civilization that thrived on Crete around 3000 to 1400 BCE was very real, and its legacy still lingers in art, myth, and mystery. Picture the island of Crete, long and mountainous, resting like a sleeping giant in the southern Aegean. Its fertile valleys produced olives, grapes, and grains, while the surrounding seas offered abundant fish and connected Crete to a network of trade across the Mediterranean. Unlike the harsh, rocky terrain of much of mainland Greece, Crete had wide plains and gentle slopes. It was a place where life could flourish. The Minoans took full advantage of this bounty. They built sprawling palace complexes, the most famous being at Knossos. Imagine it, a labyrinthine structure of countless rooms, corridors winding into one another, storerooms filled with jars of oil and grain, grand staircases leading upward to light-filled halls. Its walls were painted with vibrant frescoes, dolphins leaping through turquoise waters, dancers whirling in ritual, athletes grasping the horns of charging bulls in daring feats of acrobatics. These paintings bring the Minoans to life with startling intimacy. Unlike many ancient cultures obsessed with war, the Minoan art seems to celebrate playfulness, nature, and ritual. Close your eyes and wander those painted halls. Hear the shuffle of sandals on polished floors, the laughter of children chasing one another through courtyards, the chants of priests conducting ceremonies to honor gods whose names we have forgotten. Smell the oil lamps burning, the incense rising, the bread baking in palace ovens. Knossos was not only a royal residence, but also a center of religion, politics, and trade. It was a world unto itself, alive with color and sound. The Minoans were extraordinary seafarers. Their ships, sleek and swift, sailed far and wide, east to Egypt, north to the Greek mainland, west toward Italy, and beyond. In exchange for olive oil, wine, and crafts, they received gold, ivory, and exotic goods. Through these voyages, Crete became a crossroads of cultures, absorbing influences and ideas, and then sending them back out, transformed with a uniquely Minoan flavor. What did they believe? Their religion remains shrouded in mystery, but the art hints at answers. Many frescoes and figurines show women in elaborate dresses, their arms raised in gestures of worship. Snakes coil in their hands, symbols of fertility, rebirth, or the underworld. Some scholars suggest the Minoans worshipped a great goddess, perhaps a Mother Earth figure, who embodied both creation and destruction. Bulls, too, appear everywhere, sacred animals representing strength, fertility, and cosmic power. The famous bull leaping scenes may have been more than sport. They might have been religious rituals, moments when human daring touched the divine. There is a softness, almost a dreamlike quality to Minoan culture compared to others of its time. While Egypt built massive pyramids for eternity and Mesopotamia raised ziggurats to pierce the heavens, Crete seemed to pour its energy into fluid art, lively rituals, and graceful architecture. The Minoans left behind no grand monuments of stone meant to last forever, but instead filled their world with beauty that feels almost ephemeral, like a dream half remembered upon waking. And yet, beneath this beauty, mysteries remain. The Minoans developed a writing system known as Linear A, but to this day, it has not been fully deciphered. The tablets survive, etched in clay, but their words remain locked. Silent voices from the past. What did they record? Inventories, prayers, laws, or poetry? We do not yet know, and perhaps that mystery itself adds to their allure, for the Minoans remain, even now, half hidden in shadow. Of course, no civilization is eternal. Around 1600 BCE, something terrible shook Crete. On the nearby island of Thera, modern-day Santorini, a massive volcanic eruption tore the land apart. The explosion was so violent, it destroyed much of Thera itself, sent tsunamis crashing against Cretan shores, and darkened the skies with ash. Some believe this disaster fatally weakened the Minoan civilization, disrupting trade, agriculture, and stability. Others suggest earthquakes or internal conflicts played their part. Whatever the cause, the brilliance of the Minoans began to dim. By 1450 BCE, the palaces were in decline. Knossos struggled on for a time, but soon the mainland Mycenaeans, warriors from Greece, took control. The Minoan script of Linear A gave way to the Mycenaean Linear B, which would eventually be deciphered and revealed as an early form of Greek. The great Minoan era was ending, and yet, even in decline, the Minoans left their mark. Their myths lived on, transformed and retold by later Greeks. The story of King Minos, the Minotaur, and the labyrinth may be echoes of the palace at Knossos. The tale of Atlantis, described by Plato, may draw from the memory of Thera's volcanic destruction. The grace of their art, the elegance of their palaces, and the spirit of their seafaring continued to ripple through the ages. Imagine once more standing in the ruins of Knossos today. Sunlight falls on crumbling stones. Columns painted in red and black stand proudly reconstructed, and fragments of frescoes whisper of dolphins and dancers. The voices are gone, the laughter faded, but the sense of a vibrant world lingers in the air. You can almost hear it if you let yourself drift. The splash of oars on the sea, the call of merchants in the harbor, the chanting of priests in torchlit halls. The Minoan civilization was not simply a prelude to Greece, it was a jewel of its own, a culture that flourished with creativity, beauty, and mystery. In its rise and fall, it reminds us of the fragility of even the greatest human endeavors, but also of their endurance. For though the Minoans vanished, their spirit lived on in myths, in ruins, and in the dreams of those who came after. And so, as you relax deeper into your pillow, let the waves of Crete wash over your imagination. Think of dolphins leaping, dancers spinning, and ships sailing into the horizon. The Minoans have faded into history, but in stories and in sleep, they remain alive, whispering to us across the gulf of time. Let us move now, dear friend, from the graceful palaces of Crete to the rugged hills and stony plains of mainland Greece. If the Minoans were dreamers, artists of the sea, then the Mycenaeans were warriors, builders, and kings. Their world was different, harder, sharper, shaped by conquest and ambition. Yet it is from them that we inherit many of the great legends of Greece, tales of heroes, of wars, and of golden masks that still shine today. This is the Mycenaean age, the time of Agamemnon, Achilles, and the echoes of Troy. The name Mycenaean comes from Mycenae, a powerful city in the northeastern Peloponnese. Archaeologists in the late 19th century uncovered its ruins and discovered treasures so dazzling they seemed torn from legend itself. Among them was a golden funeral mask, its features hammered in shining metal, which Heinrich Schliemann famously declared was the face of Agamemnon, the king from Homer's epics. Whether or not it truly was, the discovery captured the imagination of the world. Suddenly, the Homeric stories of the Iliad and Odyssey no longer seemed pure myth. They might, after all, have roots in real history. The Mycenaeans rose to prominence around 1600 BCE, roughly as the Minoans were declining. Unlike the open, fluid palaces of Crete, Mycenaean cities were built like fortresses. Their walls, made of massive limestone blocks, were so immense that later Greeks believed only the Cyclopes, giants of legend, could have lifted them. We still call them Cyclopean walls today. Behind these walls, kings ruled from citadels, their authority extending over the fertile plains and surrounding villages. Life in Mycenaean Greece revolved around the palace, but unlike the airy, colorful complexes of Knossos, these palaces had a stern, militaristic air. At their heart lay the Megaron, a great hall with a central hearth, flanked by columns, where the king held court and feasts. Around it stretched storerooms packed with goods, workshops for metal workers, potters and weavers, and archives where scribes pressed symbols into clay tablets using linear B, the script inherited and adapted from the Minoans. Unlike linear A, this script has been deciphered, and we now know it was an early form of the Greek language, the oldest Greek words preserved in history. The tablets reveal a world of bureaucracy and order, They list inventories of grain, oil, weapons, and livestock. They record offerings to gods, Poseidon, Zeus, Hera, and other familiar names, already present centuries before classical Greece. We see, even here, the deep roots of Greek religion. The gods of Olympus were not creations of Athens or Homer alone. They had lived in the imaginations of Mycenaean Greeks long before, yet the Mycenaeans were not content to remain within their walls. They were seafarers and warriors, pushing outward to dominate the Aegean. They conquered Crete, absorbing much of the Minoan culture, and extended their reach to the islands, the coast of Asia Minor, and beyond. Their pottery has been found as far as Egypt and the Levant, a sign of their wide influence. They were not as playful in art as the Minoans. Their style was sterner, more functional, but their power was undeniable. And then there are the legends, for it is in this age that we find the seeds of the Trojan War, that great saga of Greek unity and strife. Whether the war itself truly happened as Homer told it, we may never know, but archaeological evidence suggests that Mycenaean Greeks did indeed wage campaigns against Troy, a wealthy city on the coast of Anatolia, controlling vital trade routes. The clash between Mycenaeans and Trojans may have been retold century after century, growing into the epics we still recite today. Picture, if you will, a Mycenaean warrior. Bronze armor gleams in the sun, a boar's tusk helmet sits upon his head, and a long spear rests in his hand. He marches with his comrades, the ground trembling beneath their feet. Their ships, with black sails and oars cutting through the water, carry them across the sea to battle. When Homer sang of Achilles, Hector, and Agamemnon, he sang of a world not too far removed from the Mycenaeans, a world where glory was won by the sword, where honor mattered above all, and where the gods themselves were thought to intervene in human affairs. But Mycenaean society was not only about war. Life for ordinary people was varied and rich. Farmers worked the land, growing wheat and barley, tending olives and grapes. Shepherds herded sheep and goats across the hills. Craftsmen fashioned pottery, weapons, and jewelry. Women wove textiles, cared for households, and participated in religious rituals. Trade brought luxury goods, ivory, amber, gold, that added touches of beauty to daily life. The palaces, though military in nature, also hummed with the activity of artisans, scribes, and servants, all contributing to the strength of the kingdom. Religious life was vibrant too. Shrines dedicated to gods and goddesses stood within palace walls, and in sacred outdoor spaces, offerings of oil, wine, and grain were made. Processions, dances, and sacrifices were likely common, though much remains shrouded in mystery. Still, from the Linear B tablets, we can see that the worship of deities like Zeus, Poseidon, and Athena stretches back into this time. The gods of the classical age were already watching, already being invoked in prayers and rituals, long before temples of marble were ever built. Yet, as with all civilizations, the Mycenaean world eventually faltered. Around 1200 BCE, disaster struck. Across the Mediterranean, many civilizations collapsed. At this time, the so-called Bronze Age collapse. The reasons remain debated. Earthquakes, droughts, invasions by the mysterious sea peoples, or internal rebellion. For the Mycenaeans, Their palaces burned one by one. Mycenae itself fell. Pylos was destroyed. Trade routes vanished. The great kings vanished, and the linear B script disappeared with them. What followed was silence. The age of warriors and kings gave way to centuries of obscurity. The so-called Greek Dark Ages. Writing was lost, cities shrank, and the grandeur of Mycenaean culture seemed to vanish. And yet, their memory lingered in song, in myth, in the stories passed from bard to bard around hearth fires. The Mycenaeans lived on. Their deeds grew larger than life. Their kings transformed into legends. Their wars remembered as epic struggles between gods and men. So when Homer, centuries later, sang of Achilles' wrath and Odysseus' wanderings, he was giving voice to the ghosts of the Mycenaean age. The real warriors may have perished, their palaces turned to rubble, but their spirit endured in poetry that would never fade. Today, if you walk among the ruins of Mycenae, you will find the great lion gate, two stone beasts carved above the entrance, standing silent guard for over 3,000 years. Step inside, and you walk where kings once ruled, where warriors once feasted, where scribes once etched tablets in clay. Descend into the beehive tombs, domed chambers where golden treasures were buried with the dead, and you can almost hear the voices of the past. The Mycenaean age was a time of power and ambition, of kings and warriors, of gods and heroes. It gave Greece its first written language, its first great architecture, and its first epic legends. It was, in many ways, the first golden age of Greek history, and though it ended in fire and ruin, its memory would echo through centuries, inspiring the poets, philosophers, and artists who came after. So let us leave the Mycenaeans now, dear friend, with their golden masks, their mighty walls, and their dreams of glory. Let their ships drift into the mist, their voices fading into song as we prepare to journey into the shadows that followed, the quiet centuries of the Greek Dark Ages, where myth and memory kept the flame alive. Close your eyes again, dear friend, and imagine the brilliant palaces of the Mycenaean kings, their golden masks, their cyclopean walls, and their far-reaching ships. Now, let all of it fade away, like a dream slipping from your grasp in the first light of morning. For this is what happened in Greece around the 1200 BCE. A great silence fell. The palaces burned, the kings disappeared, writing was forgotten, and the bustling trade routes went quiet. This was the beginning of the Greek Dark Ages, a period that lasted for centuries, when the world of heroes gave way to something quieter, simpler, and more mysterious. When we say Dark Ages, we do not mean only the absence of light, but the absence of records. For generations, we know so little about what truly happened in Greece. The script of the Mycenaeans, Linear B, vanished, and with it, written history was silenced. Archaeologists find fewer artifacts from this time, fewer buildings, fewer signs of wealth or power, and yet the people of Greece endured. They lived on, though in smaller communities, humbler villages, bound more closely to the rhythms of survival. Why did the Mycenaean world collapse? Scholars still debate. Some point to natural disasters, earthquakes shaking palaces, droughts starving the land. Others speak of invasions, of raiders sweeping across the seas, of the mysterious sea peoples who devastated civilizations from Anatolia to Egypt. Perhaps it was not one cause but many: famine weakening kingdoms, trade breaking down, enemies pressing in, and ordinary people rising against the heavy demands of palace rulers. However it happened, the grand Mycenaean age crumbled, and in its place stretched centuries of obscurity. Picture the land now, emptied of grandeur. The once mighty citadels stand in ruins, their walls crumbling, their halls echoing only with wind. The bustling ports are quiet, ships rotting on the shore. The scribes are gone, their clay tablets left to dissolve into dust. Villages are scattered and poor, made of simple huts, their people tending goats, fishing, and farming only enough to live. Trade is scarce, life is fragile, and yet, within this silence, something important was happening. Stories. The people had no written words, but they still had their voices. Around hearth fires, in smoky huts, singers and storytellers kept alive the memories of a brighter past. They told of great kings who fought at Troy, of cunning Odysseus who wandered the seas, of mighty Achilles whose rage burned like fire. They told of gods who ruled the skies, the seas, and the underworld, of Zeus with his thunderbolts, of Athena with her wisdom, of Poseidon with his storms. These stories grew richer, deeper, woven into song, carried from one generation to the next. This was the age of the oral tradition, when history was preserved in rhythm and rhyme, in verse designed to be remembered. The Dark Ages, though silent in writing, were alive with words spoken aloud. They were words that would one day be written down as the epics of Homer, but for now, they lived only in memory. Imagine the flicker of firelight on a bard's face, the rapt attention of villagers leaning in, the children wide-eyed with wonder. These were not only entertainments, but the thread that tied the people of Greece to their past and gave them hope for their future. The Dark Ages were also a time of movement. Populations shifted, tribes wandered. Some Greeks sailed outward, settling in the islands of the Aegean, along the coast of Asia Minor, and even further west. These migrations spread Greek language and culture beyond the mainland, setting the stage for the expansion that would come later. Among these groups were the Dorians, whose arrival reshaped parts of Greece, introducing new dialects, new customs, and perhaps new political forms. The Greeks were changing, quietly, beneath the surface of obscurity. Iron, too, began to appear in this age. The Bronze Age had ended with the collapse of palaces, but in the dark centuries that followed, people discovered ironworking. Iron tools and weapons slowly replaced bronze, harder and more durable, giving even small communities the means to defend themselves and to farm more efficiently. Out of hardship came resilience. Out of silence came adaptation. There is a paradox to the Dark Ages. To the eye of history, they seem empty. Fewer artifacts, fewer ruins, fewer signs of grandeur. But to the imagination, they are rich, for it was here that the Greek spirit quietly transformed. Without the weight of palaces, without the shadow of kings, the people lived closer to the earth, closer to their gods, closer to the stories that bound them together. The seeds of future democracy, philosophy, and art may have been sown in these humble centuries. Think of it this way: a forest sometimes must burn before new growth can emerge. The Mycenaean world was the forest, grand and towering, but it fell in flames. The Dark Ages were the quiet field left behind, where in silence the seeds of a new Greece began to take root. By the end of this period, around the 8th century BCE, a great transformation was stirring. The Greeks began to write again, this time not with linear B, but with a new alphabet, adapted from the Phoenicians. For the first time, vowels were written as well as consonants, making it easy to record the rich oral traditions that had survived through the centuries. Out of darkness came words that would never be forgotten. Homer sang the Iliad and the Odyssey, gathering the voices of countless generations into poetry that still moves us today. The Greek Dark Ages gave birth to the Age of Epic, and more than that, the small scattered villages grew into organized communities. The polis, the city-state, began to take shape. These were not kingdoms ruled by distant, unapproachable kings, but communities bound together by shared identity and laws. Athens, Sparta, Corinth, and others would rise from these humble beginnings. The Dark Ages had ended, and a new chapter in Greek history was beginning. But before we rush ahead, let us linger here a moment longer in the mystery of this shadowed time. Imagine the quiet hills of Greece, the flicker of firelight in a small hut, the sound of a bard's voice carrying a story into the night. Outside, the stars blaze brightly, as they did for shepherds and sailors long ago. In this silence, in this seeming emptiness, lies the heartbeat of Greece, patient, enduring, waiting for the dawn to come again. Dear friend, as we leave behind the long silence of the Greek Dark Ages, we arrive at a turning point. Slowly, like the sunrise spilling over the mountains, Greece began to awaken. Villages grew, trade revived, and a new form of community emerged, one that would shape not only Greek history, but the very idea of political life in the Western world. This was the birth of the polis, the city-state. The word polis simply means city, but it was far more than just a place of houses and markets. It was a living organism, a community of people bound together not only by geography, but by shared identity, shared laws, and shared gods. In the polis, people found their sense of belonging. It was home, protection, and pride, all in one. Imagine the landscape of Greece. Mountains rise like barriers, valleys lie tucked between them, and the coastline is carved into countless bays and harbors. This geography kept communities small and independent. There was no single flat plain where one empire could easily dominate all of Greece, as in Egypt or Mesopotamia. Instead, the land itself encouraged the growth of many little centers, each with its own character. Out of these seeds, the polis, Athens, Sparta, Corinth, Thebes, and many others, grew. At the heart of each polis was the Acropolis, the high place. In times of danger, people could retreat to it, its walls offering safety from attack. But it was not only for defense. Over time, temples were built there, sanctuaries where gods and goddesses were honored. Below the Acropolis lay the Agora, the open marketplace. Here, people came to trade goods, to share news, to debate, to worship, and to celebrate festivals. The Agora was not simply a market, it was the heartbeat of the polis, a place where daily life and public life blended into one. Life in the polis gave rise to a new sense of identity. People no longer thought of themselves only as members of tribes or families. They began to think of themselves as citizens, participants in a community with rights, duties, and responsibilities. To belong to a polis was to have a place in something larger than oneself. Different polis took different shapes. In Athens, the seeds of democracy were planted, decisions were debated, laws were voted upon, and citizens had a voice. It was not yet the democracy we think of today. For women, slaves, and foreigners were excluded, but even so, it was revolutionary. Never before had ordinary men been invited to share in the governance of their community. In contrast, Sparta chose another path. There, life was built on discipline and military strength. Boys were taken from their families at the age of 7 to be trained as warriors. The polis was everything. The individual was nothing. Yet even here, citizens felt pride. For to be Spartan was to belong to a community feared and respected across Greece. Other polis found their own balance, some ruled by kings, others by oligarchies, governments of the few, but always the idea of the polis endured, a community where people were bound not only by land, but by shared identity and collective life. Religion was central to the polis. Each city had its patron deity. Athens honored Athena, goddess of wisdom. Corinth turned to Aphrodite. Delphi, though small, became sacred to all Greeks as the home of Apollo's oracle, where people from every polis came seeking guidance. Festivals brought citizens together to honor the gods with feasting, games, sacrifices, and theater. These events were not only religious, they were deeply social, weaving bonds of unity across the polis. And yet, the polis were fiercely independent. Each guarded its freedom jealously. Wars between them were common, for pride in one's polis often turned into rivalry with neighbors. This independence would later be both Greece's strength and its weakness. United, they could repel even the mightiest empire, as they did against Persia. Divided, they could tear one another apart, as in the Peloponnesian War. The birth of the polis also gave rise to a new form of military. Instead of great warrior kings leading armies of chariots, the Greeks developed the hoplite phalanx, ordinary citizens, armed with spears and shields, stood shoulder to shoulder in tight formation. Each man protected the one beside him, and together they formed an almost impenetrable wall. Victory did not depend on the strength of a single hero, but on the discipline and unity of the community. The phalanx was the perfect expression of the polis in battle, individuals standing together as one. But the polis was not only about war, it was also the birthplace of culture. In the agora, poets recited verses, philosophers asked questions, and dramatists performed plays. Ideas were debated, stories were shared, and art was displayed. Each polis became a laboratory of human creativity. Some, like Athens, produced philosophies and dramas that would shape the world forever. Others, like Corinth, thrived as centers of trade and craftsmanship, and beneath it all lay the ordinary rhythm of life. Farmers worked the land, bringing their produce to the agora. Fishermen cast their nets in the early dawn. Women wove textiles, cared for households, and participated in religious festivals. Children learned their roles, whether as future citizens, warriors, or caretakers of tradition. Slaves, though without rights, formed part of the fabric of society, working in households, fields, and workshops. The polis, though small, contained multitudes. Let us pause here and imagine walking through one of these early polis. The morning sun rises over the Acropolis, its temples glowing softly in the light. In the agora, stalls are being set up, filled with olives, figs, wine, and pottery. Citizens gather to discuss matters of the day. Who will lead the militia? What offerings should be made to the gods? Whether a neighboring polis can be trusted? Children play in the dust. Priests prepare for a festival. The hum of life fills the air, rich and vibrant. This was no longer the silence of the Dark Ages. This was a world alive with energy, with ideas, with community. The polis gave the Greeks not only a structure of governance, but a sense of purpose. It was in the polis that freedom, belonging, and pride were defined. It was in the polis that democracy, philosophy, and art first took root. In time, the polis would shape everything about Greek history, its triumphs and its tragedies, its unity and its divisions. But in these early days, it was simply a new way of being, born out of centuries of hardship and silence. The polis was the answer to the question the Dark Ages had left behind. How shall we live together? And what does it mean to belong? As you drift deeper into relaxation, think of the polis not just as a city of stone, but as a living community, breathing with the rhythm of its people. The clatter of the marketplace, the murmur of debate, the chanting of prayers, the footsteps of hoplites on parade, all of it blending into the steady heartbeat of Greece itself, a heartbeat that would echo through history. Welcome back, dear friend. Now that the polis have been born and the Greek world has found its heartbeat, it is time to step into the shimmering realm of the gods. For the Greeks did not see their world as something separate from the divine. Every mountain, every river, every tree could be the dwelling place of a spirit. Every storm, every harvest, every victory was shaped by unseen hands. To be Greek was to live surrounded by myth, by stories that explained not only the origins of the cosmos, but also the meaning of human life. Greek religion was not a single book, nor a single prophet. It was a vast tapestry of tales, rituals, and traditions passed down over generations. At its heart stood the Olympian gods, a family of deities who ruled from the heights of Mount Olympus. But it also included older forces, primordial beings from the dawn of creation, spirits of the land and sea, and heroes whose deeds lifted them halfway between mortal and divine. Let us begin at the very beginning with the Greek story of creation. In the beginning, there was chaos, not chaos as we think of it today, but a yawning void, a formless nothingness. Out of chaos came Gaia, the earth, and Uranus, the sky. From their union sprang the Titans, powerful beings who ruled before the Olympians. Among them was Cronus, who seized power by overthrowing his own father, Uranus. But Cronus, too, was destined to fall, for he feared that his children would overthrow him. To prevent this, he swallowed each newborn child whole. Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, and Poseidon. Yet his wife, Rhea, tricked him when their youngest, Zeus, was born. She gave Cronus a stone wrapped in swaddling clothes, and he devoured it, thinking it was the child. Meanwhile, Zeus was hidden away, raised in secret. When Zeus grew strong, he returned to challenge his father. With cunning and force, he compelled Cronus to disgorge his siblings, and together they waged war against the Titans. This was the Titanomachy, a cosmic battle that shook the heavens and the earth. In the end, Zeus and his siblings triumphed. The Titans were cast into Tartarus, the deepest pit of the underworld, and the Olympians took their thrones upon Mount Olympus. From this moment, the reign of the gods truly began. Picture Mount Olympus as the Greeks imagined it, not just a mountain, but a radiant palace in the clouds, where the gods feasted on ambrosia and nectar, their laughter rolling like thunder across the sky. Zeus ruled as king, hurling his thunderbolts. Beside him stood Hera, his queen, fierce and proud, protector of marriage, but often jealous of Zeus's wandering affections. Poseidon, lord of the sea, wielded his trident, stirring storms or calming waves. Hades, though less often mentioned, ruled the shadowy underworld, where the souls of the dead dwelt. Then there was Athena, goddess of wisdom and war, born fully armed from the head of Zeus after he swallowed her mother. Metis, Apollo, god of light, prophecy, and music, whose arrows brought both healing and plague. Artemis, his twin sister, guardian of the hunt and protector of maidens. Ares, the god of war's fury, feared even by his fellow gods. Aphrodite, born from the foam of the sea, goddess of love and beauty, whose smile could sway both gods and mortals. Hermes, the swift messenger, guide of souls, trickster, and patron of travelers. And Dionysus, god of wine, ecstasy, and transformation, who blurred the line between joy and madness. These gods were not distant, untouchable beings. They were vividly human in their loves, their quarrels, their passions, and their pride. They quarreled, schemed, fell in love, and grew jealous. They punished and rewarded, often unpredictably. For the Greeks, the gods reflected the complexity of human life itself, magnified to divine scale. To worship them was not only to revere perfection, but to acknowledge the divine in the messiness of existence. Religion in the polis was woven into every aspect of life. There were no Sunday sermons or weekly services, but instead a constant rhythm of festivals, sacrifices, and rituals. To honor the gods, Greeks built temples, glorious marble structures that were not places for congregational worship, but houses for the deities themselves. Inside stood the cult statue, often made of wood in the early days, later carved of marble, or even plated in gold and ivory. Offerings of food, wine, or incense were placed before the altar, and animals were sacrificed, their smoke rising as a gift to the heavens. Festivals were joyous occasions when the whole community gathered to celebrate its bond with the divine. In Athens, the Panathenaic festival honored Athena with processions, athletic contests, and offerings of finely woven garments. In Olympia, games were held every 4 years in honor of Zeus, drawing athletes from across the Greek world. Victors were crowned with olive wreaths, their names remembered for generations. At Delphi, pilgrims from every polis came to consult Apollo's oracle, where a priestess, the Pythia, delivered cryptic prophecies that could sway kings and armies. But beyond rituals and temples, it was the myths themselves that gave Greek religion its soul. Myths were not fixed scriptures, but living stories, retold in countless variations. They explained natural phenomena, the change of seasons, through the tale of Demeter and Persephone, the origins of fire through the theft of Prometheus, the dangers of hubris through the fall of Icarus. They offered lessons, warnings, and comfort. They showed that even gods could suffer, that fate was inescapable, that love and loss were universal. For the Greeks, myths were also a bridge between mortals and immortals. Heroes such as Heracles, Perseus, and Theseus stood as models of courage and cunning, their deeds remembered in epic poetry and local cults. Often, these heroes were honored like minor gods, with shrines and offerings. They reminded the Greeks that human greatness, though fleeting, could reach toward the divine. And at the edges of this mythic world lurked other beings, nymphs in the forests, satyrs in the hills, sea monsters in the depths, and the Fates, three mysterious sisters who spun, measured, and cut the thread of every life. No god, not even Zeus, could escape their decree. Fate, or Moira, was the ultimate law that bound all things. What made Greek religion unique was not blind obedience, but participation. It was not about faith in a doctrine, but about living in harmony with the divine order. To honor the gods was to keep balance, to show gratitude, to avoid hubris, excessive pride that invited downfall. To neglect them was to invite disaster. But within this framework, there was room for laughter, for celebration, for art, for questioning. It was a religion that inspired drama, philosophy, and poetry as much as it inspired reverence. Let us pause here and imagine a festival night in ancient Greece. Torches flicker in the darkness, music fills the air, pipes and drums weaving together. Dancers circle around the altar, their shadows leaping against temple walls. The scent of roasting meat mingles with the sweet aroma of incense. Children laugh, elders tell stories, priests chant prayers, and somewhere, perhaps, a poet is reciting the deeds of Achilles or the wanderings of Odysseus. The gods, though unseen, are everywhere, in the smoke, in the music, in the very heartbeat of the polis. As you sink deeper into calm, let these images carry you. The gods of Olympus, watching from the clouds, the mortals below honoring them with song and sacrifice, the myths weaving themselves into the fabric of everyday life. Greek religion was never separate from the world. It was the world, shimmering with the presence of the divine. As the 8th century BCE unfolded, the quiet hum of Greek villages grew louder. Populations were rising, fields were filling, and the polis was thriving. Yet with growth came pressure. The rocky soil of Greece could only feed so many. The valleys, though fertile in their way, were limited, hemmed in by mountains and sea. Young men, restless and ambitious, found fewer opportunities at home. And so, like waves rolling outward from a crowded shore, the Greeks began to look beyond their homeland. This was the beginning of the age of colonization, a period when the Greek world expanded across the seas, planting new communities along distant coasts. Between the 8th and 6th centuries BCE, Greek ships ventured far and wide, westward to Italy and Sicily, northward to the Black Sea, southward to North Africa. They carried not only goods, but culture, language, and ideas, weaving a great web that stretched across the Mediterranean. Picture a small Greek harbor at dawn. The sea is calm, the air crisp. A ship waits at anchor, its hull long and narrow, built for speed and distance. Its prow is painted with eyes, meant to see the way ahead. The crew gathers, young men with hope in their hearts, their families watching from the shore. For some, this voyage means adventure. For others, exile. Colonization was often a solution, to disputes within the polis. Those who lost out in political struggles were sometimes sent away to found new homes, turning misfortune into opportunity. The motives were many. Some sought fertile land where grain would grow more easily than on the rocky hills of Greece. Others sought metals, iron, silver, copper, that their homeland lacked. Traders longed for new markets, new harbors, new routes that would make their polis rich. Still others carried a sense of destiny, a belief that the gods guided them to places where shrines and temples would rise. Colonization was not only practical, it was spiritual, wrapped in ritual and hope. Every colony began with an oikist, a founder chosen by the polis. Before departure, the oikist would visit Delphi to consult the oracle of Apollo. Her words were often cryptic, but they gave divine sanction to the journey ahead. With her blessing, the colonists would set sail, carrying sacred fire from the mother city to light the hearth of the new one. This flame symbolized continuity. The colony was new, but its soul was bound to its origin. And so, colonies sprang up like stars across the sea. In southern Italy, the Greeks founded Cumae, Croton, Sybaris, and Tarentum, cities so numerous and wealthy that the region came to be known as Magna Graecia, Greater Greece. In Sicily, Syracuse rose, destined to become a power in its own right, rivaling even Athens. To the north, colonies like Byzantium, later Constantinople, and much later still Istanbul, guarded the entrance to the Black Sea, opening a route to the grain-rich lands of Ukraine. Along the coast of Anatolia, Miletus, Ephesus, and Smyrna grew vibrant cities that would produce philosophers, poets, and scientists. Even in distant Spain and France, Greek traders established outposts, carrying their language and pottery to the edges of the known world. These colonies were not mere outposts of conquest. They were new polis, independent but connected to their mother cities through ties of kinship, religion, and trade. Each had its own agora, its own acropolis, its own festivals. Yet, they spoke Greek, worshipped the Olympians, and shared in the great web of Hellenic culture. Colonization spread not only people but identity. A Greek in Sicily or the Black Sea still thought of himself as part of a broader world, bound by language, myth, and custom. The effects were profound. Trade flourished. Grain from the Black Sea fed the growing populations of Athens and other cities. Silver from Spain and copper from Cyprus filled Greek workshops. Pottery from Corinth was shipped across the seas, its elegant designs prized from Italy to Egypt. Ideas traveled as well. Stories, technologies, and philosophies moved along these routes, enriching every polis they touched. But with opportunity came conflict. Greek colonies sometimes clashed with the native peoples they displaced or encountered. In Sicily, Greeks battled the Carthaginians, who had their own ambitions in the West. In Anatolia, Greek settlers lived alongside Lydians, Persians, and other powerful neighbors. The colonies were both bridges and battlegrounds, places where cultures met, mingled, and sometimes fought. Still, the age of colonization marked a new confidence in the Greek spirit. No longer confined to their mountainous homeland, the Greeks became a maritime people, their identity tied as much to the sea as to the land. To be Greek was to sail, to trade, to explore. This outward movement laid the foundations for the golden ages to come, when Athens would build its empire and Alexander would carry Greek culture to the farthest reaches of Asia. Let us pause here and imagine standing on the deck of a Greek ship as it sails toward a new horizon. The sun glitters on the waves, gulls circle overhead, and the wind fills the sail. Behind you lies the familiar coast of home, growing smaller in the distance. Ahead lies uncertainty, a new land, a new community, a new life. The sea itself seems to whisper with promise, carrying you forward, carrying Greece outward into the world. The age of colonization was not a single event, but a steady wave, rolling outward for generations. And though it brought hardship as well as hope, it left behind a Mediterranean dotted with Greek cities, each a spark of culture and life. When we think of Greece today, we often picture the Acropolis of Athens or the ruins of Sparta. But Greece was never just one land. It was a network, a constellation of cities spread across the seas, bound together by shared heritage. Colonization made Greece larger than its geography, turning it into a world civilization. And so, as you drift deeper into calm, think of the Greek ships sailing steadily under the stars, guided by the constellations they themselves had named. Think of the harbors where strangers became neighbors, where markets bustled with goods from faraway lands, where temples rose to honor gods who now watched over new homes. This was the age of colonization, a time when Greece stretched its arms wide, embracing the sea, embracing the world. As we drift back to the Peloponnese, dear friend, we arrive at a land of rugged hills, fertile valleys, and disciplined communities. Here, in the region of Laconia, the city-state of Sparta began to take shape, while Athens and other polis nurtured art, philosophy, and debate. Sparta followed a different path. It grew into a society focused on strength, order, and the mastery of the body and mind. Its rise is a story of discipline, survival, and a unique vision of what a community could be. Sparta's geography shaped its destiny. Enclosed by mountains on one side and the sea on the other, it was protected naturally from invasion. Fertile plains allowed farming, but rocky hills made large-scale agriculture difficult, reinforcing the need for a tightly organized society. Here, the land itself encouraged self-reliance, communal cohesion, and a warrior ethos. Sparta was never vast or sprawling. It was compact, but its power grew steadily, like a spring tightening in the hills. From early on, the Spartans developed a dual structure of governance. Kings ruled, yes, two hereditary kings from separate families, but they shared power with a council of elders, the Gerousia, and an assembly of citizens, the Apellas. This balance of monarchy, oligarchy, and popular voice gave Sparta stability. Even in the distant past, the Spartans were thinking carefully about how to organize society to endure, to resist both external threats and internal chaos. Sparta's true focus, however, was not politics but military excellence. From the age of 7, Spartan boys entered the agoge, the rigorous training system designed to forge citizens into warriors. Imagine the early morning chill as children run through hills and fields, learning endurance, survival, and the mastery of weapons. They are taught discipline, obedience, and the value of teamwork. Their bodies are hardened their minds sharpened. By adulthood, every Spartan male is a soldier, ready to defend the polis at any cost. Spartan women, too, had a remarkable role. Unlike in many other Greek cities, Spartan women were educated, trained in physical fitness, and enjoyed considerable freedom. Their primary duty was to bear strong children, but they also managed estates, while men trained or waged war. They were proud, resilient, and deeply invested in the honor of Sparta, contributing to the city's extraordinary cohesion and strength. This focus on military life produced the famous Spartan hoplites, soldiers of unmatched discipline. When the phalanx moved, each shield pressed against the next, each spear aligned, the soldiers formed a single, unyielding wall. Individual skill mattered less than unity, courage, and obedience. The Spartan army became legendary, feared across Greece. Their victories at Thermopylae and elsewhere would echo for millennia, inspiring awe and respect. But Sparta was not only a city of warriors, its society was structured to preserve stability. Helots, an enslaved population, worked the land to support the Spartans, freeing the citizens to train and govern. This system, though harsh and oppressive, allowed Sparta to focus on military perfection. It was a society built for endurance, shaped by necessity, and dedicated to survival in a challenging landscape. Sparta's culture emphasized simplicity and austerity. Luxuries were discouraged. Excessive wealth or ostentation was frowned upon. The ideal Spartan citizen valued courage, discipline, and loyalty above comfort or indulgence. In this way, Sparta cultivated a unique identity, a city that prized strength, unity, and order above all else. Religion remained integral to Spartan life. Festivals, sacrifices, and temples honored the gods, especially Athena, Apollo, and Artemis. Rituals often reinforced military values, celebrating bravery, endurance, and communal bonds. The sacred and the practical intertwined seamlessly. Every act, whether in training, governance, or worship, reinforced the cohesion and identity of the polis. Sparta's rise was not instantaneous. For centuries, it expanded its territory, conquered neighboring peoples, and absorbed other communities. By the 7th century BCE, it had established dominance over the Peloponnese, commanding loyalty and respect, and earning a reputation as the most disciplined and formidable military power in Greece. Yet, even as Sparta grew strong, it remained mysterious and austere. To outsiders, it seemed almost otherworldly, a society where freedom for some meant subjugation for others, where discipline and order reigned above pleasure or art. It was a polis of paradox, harsh yet stable, feared yet admired, quiet yet commanding. Let us pause now and imagine walking through the Spartan countryside at dusk. The hills are bathed in soft golden light. The air is crisp, carrying the scent of wild herbs and the distant sound of shepherds tending flocks. In the distance, boys run through training grounds, their voices echoing across the plains. Women walk between homes, tending their families and land with quiet strength. Soldiers gather, shields and spears glinting in the fading light, preparing for the next day. The polis breathes as a single organism, each heartbeat synchronized with the others. Sparta's rise teaches us that societies can thrive in many ways. While Athens would focus on debate, philosophy, and democracy, Sparta chose strength, unity, and order. Both paths would shape Greek history, each contributing to the rich tapestry of culture, politics, and legend. The story of Sparta reminds us that greatness can take many forms, some built on intellect and art, others on courage and discipline, all bound by shared identity and purpose. And so, dear friend, as your thoughts begin to drift, let the hills of Laconia and the disciplined rhythm of Spartan life settle into your imagination. Feel the quiet determination, the steady heartbeat of a city forged for endurance, the timeless lessons of courage, unity, and resilience. Sparta, in its stark beauty, endures as a symbol of human strength and communal purpose, whispering across the centuries. Dear friend, as we leave the austere world of Sparta behind, we turn our gaze eastward to Attica, the region surrounding the city of Athens. Unlike Sparta, Athens would rise not primarily through military might, but through intellect, culture, and community. Its story is one of curiosity, creativity, and the slow unfolding of democracy, a story of how a city can transform thought, governance, and art, leaving a legacy that resonates across millennia. Athens' beginnings, like those of many Greek cities, are rooted in myth. The city honored Athena, goddess of wisdom and warfare, as its patron. Legend tells us that she and Poseidon competed for the city's favor. Poseidon struck the ground with his trident, producing a saltwater spring. Athena offered the olive tree, symbolizing peace, prosperity, and sustenance. The Athenians chose Athena's gift, and she became the protector of the city. Even in myth, the seed of Athens' character is visible, a balance of intelligence, strategy, and practical vision. By the 8th century BCE, Athens had emerged from the shadow of the Greek Dark Ages, growing steadily in population and influence. Its land, a mix of fertile plains and rocky hills, supported farmers, shepherds, and craftsmen. Unlike Sparta, Athens did not organize its society around the singular pursuit of war. Instead, the Athenians cultivated a diverse economy based on agriculture, trade, and crafts. The agora, the marketplace at the heart of the city, was a vibrant center of commerce and civic life. Here, citizens gathered to discuss the news, debate politics, barter goods, and exchange ideas. The pulse of Athens was civic engagement, alive and growing with each passing generation. Athens' path to power was not smooth. The city experienced periods of social strife, marked by economic inequality and political tension between aristocrats and common citizens. Land was concentrated in the hands of a few wealthy families, while the majority struggled to make a living. Over time, this tension sparked reforms and innovations, many designed to prevent civil unrest and create fairness. One of the earliest reformers was Draco, a lawmaker whose harsh legal codes were designed to stabilize society, though they were feared for their severity. Later, Solon, a poet and statesman, introduced reforms that offered debt relief and greater participation in governance. Solon's vision allowed citizens to serve in public office according to their wealth, creating a more flexible and inclusive society. Over decades, this groundwork would give rise to democracy, where citizens could vote, debate, and shape the laws of their polis. Athens' rise was also cultural. Art, architecture, and literature flourished. Early temples, simple yet beautiful, honored Athena and other gods. Pottery began to tell stories in black figure and red figure designs, illustrating myths, daily life, and heroic deeds. Poetry and music thrived. Homer's epics were recited in schools and homes, while local poets composed lyric verses celebrating love, courage, and the city itself. In Athens, knowledge was valued, questions encouraged, and the pursuit of understanding became a civic ideal. Trade and maritime skill contributed further to Athens' growth. Located near the coast, the city built fleets of ships that connected it to other Greek lands and beyond. Merchants carried pottery, olive oil, wine, and crafts to distant markets, bringing back goods, wealth, and ideas. Athens became a hub of interaction, a crossroads where creativity and commerce met, fueling the city's influence and sophistication. Religion remained central to Athenian life. Festivals like the Panathenaea honored Athena with processions, competitions, and offerings. Temples, sanctuaries, and shrines dotted the city, blending civic pride with devotion to the divine. Even in politics and law, religious observances were integral. Athens understood that life and faith were intertwined. The city thrived when its people honored both human endeavor and the gods above. Education was also crucial. Young Athenians studied poetry, music, and physical training. They learned not only to fight like all Greeks, but to think, debate, and engage with the world around them. Philosophical inquiry had its roots here, sowing seeds that would flourish in the coming centuries. Critical thought, civic responsibility, and aesthetic sensibility became intertwined with the city's identity. By the 6th century BCE, Athens had established itself as a center of political innovation. Leaders like Cleisthenes further refined democratic institutions, creating councils and assemblies that allowed citizens to participate actively in governance. Athens had become not only a city of trade and culture, but a beacon of civic freedom, a place where the idea of collective decision-making could take root and thrive. Even its architecture reflected its aspirations. Hills and valleys were adorned with temples, sanctuaries, and public spaces. Later, the Acropolis would rise, crowned with the Parthenon, a symbol of the city's devotion to Athena, its cultural achievement, and its political identity. The city's landscape itself narrated its values. Beauty, wisdom, and civic unity intertwined in stone and marble. Let us pause now, dear friend, and imagine Athens in its early days. The morning sun glimmers over the olive groves. Fishermen cast their nets along the coast, and merchants arrange wares in the bustling agora. Children run through the streets, learning songs, myths, and the skills they will need as citizens. Citizens debate the day's matters. Elders advise the young. Priests offer prayers to Athena and other gods. The city hums with life, curiosity, and purpose. Athens' rise shows us another path in Greek history. While Sparta cultivated discipline and strength, Athens nurtured intellect, creativity, and civic engagement. Both cities shaped Greece, each in its own way, offering lessons about the diversity of human societies. And so, as you let your mind relax further, let the gentle rhythm of Athens, its markets, Temples, debates, and festivals wash over your imagination. Feel the warmth of the sun on marble steps. Hear the distant voices of citizens in conversation, and sense the quiet promise of a city growing into greatness. Athens, in all its early brilliance, stands as a reminder that curiosity, culture, and shared responsibility can shape a world echoing through history and guiding dreams even today. Dear friend, as we leave the rising city-states of Athens and Sparta, the Greek world faces a threat that comes not from within, but from the vast empires beyond the horizon. To the east lies Persia, a colossal realm stretching from the deserts of Arabia to the rivers of Mesopotamia. In the 5th century BCE, this empire, ruled by kings of immense wealth and power, turned its gaze westward toward the scattered polis of Greece. This is the story of the Persian Wars, a tale of courage, strategy, and unity, where small city-states stood against a force that seemed unstoppable. The first Persian invasion began around 490 BCE under King Darius I, whose armies sought to punish Athens for supporting a revolt in Ionia, the Greek cities of Asia Minor. Picture the Aegean Sea, calm yet foreboding. Greek ships gather in harbors, citizens prepare for battle, and the scent of salt and olive groves fills the air. At Marathon, a plain near Athens, a small army of Athenians, numbering perhaps 10,000, faced a Persian force nearly double their size. The Battle of Marathon was a moment of remarkable courage. Led by generals like Miltiades, the Athenians charged across the plain, closing the distance to the Persians before the enemy could deploy archers and cavalry effectively. Spears clashed, shields rang, and the Greek phalanx, disciplined and resolute, held firm. By the day's end, the Athenians had won a stunning victory. The plain of Marathon, its soil soaked with history, became a symbol of human courage against overwhelming odds. In Athens, the victory was celebrated not only for its military significance, but for its demonstration of civic unity. Ordinary citizens had defended their city, proving that collective effort could overcome even the mightiest empire. The story of Marathon would live on for generations, inspiring songs, monuments, and even the modern marathon race, echoing the endurance and heroism of the past. But Persia was vast, and victory at Marathon was only a prelude. Darius's son, Xerxes, launched a massive invasion 20 years later, in 480 BCE. His army and fleet were enormous, said to number in the hundreds of thousands. The Greek city-states faced a choice: flee, submit, or unite. Against all odds, leaders from Athens, Sparta, Corinth, and other poleis chose unity, forming alliances to resist the invaders. The first stage of this invasion led to the narrow pass of Thermopylae, where King Leonidas of Sparta and his small force of 300 Spartans, alongside allies, made a legendary stand. Imagine the rocky gorge, waves crashing on one side, mountains rising on the other. For 3 days, the Spartans and their companions held the pass against Xerxes' vast army. They fought not only for survival, but for the freedom of their city-states, their courage echoing through time. Though the Greeks were eventually betrayed and overwhelmed, their sacrifice inspired all of Greece to resist. Meanwhile, the naval battles were equally pivotal. The Greek fleet, led by Themistocles of Athens, confronted the Persian armada in the Straits of Salamis. The narrow waters nullified the Persians' numerical advantage. Greek triremes, swift and maneuverable, rammed enemy ships, turning the tide of battle. The sea became a theater of strategy and skill, where knowledge of geography, coordination, and daring could defeat sheer force. The victory at Salamis was decisive, forcing Xerxes to retreat and saving the heart of Greece from conquest. In the aftermath, battles continued on land, with the Greeks, united in purpose, defeating Persian forces at Plataea and Mycale. These victories ensured that Greek independence endured, and that the vast Persian Empire could not dominate the narrow mountains and islands of the Aegean. The wars forged a sense of collective identity, showing that even fiercely independent poleis could come together to defend shared values. The Persian Wars left a lasting legacy. Militarily, they demonstrated the effectiveness of the phalanx, the power of disciplined citizen soldiers, and the importance of naval strategy. Politically, they inspired cooperation and alliances, laying the groundwork for future confederations like the Delian League. Culturally, the wars became mythic, celebrated in poetry, art, and story, immortalizing heroism and the defense of freedom. Let us imagine for a moment the night after a battle. The battlefield is quiet now. The wind carries the scent of olive trees and salt from the sea. Fires flicker in distant camps, casting shadows over soldiers' tired faces. Survivors tend to the wounded. Musicians softly play, and poets recount the deeds of the day. In this stillness, the Greek spirit is palpable, a quiet, steady determination that values courage, unity, and honor above all. The Persian Wars also reshaped Athens in particular. Athens emerged as a leading city-state, its navy strengthened, its prestige enhanced, and its citizens more aware than ever of the power of collective effort. Sparta remained a military model, but Athens would now combine military skill with cultural and intellectual growth, setting the stage for its golden age. And so, dear friend, as your thoughts drift with the waves of the Aegean, picture the small city-states standing against the empire, the courage of Marathon, the heroism of Thermopylae, the cunning at Salamis. Feel the rhythm of oars cutting through water, the clash of spears, and the quiet triumph of human determination. The Persian Wars were not just battles, they were a proving ground, a moment when Greece defined itself, and a story that would echo across time. Dear friend, after the trials of war and the uniting of the Greek city-states against Persia, Athens entered a period of remarkable growth and brilliance. This is the era often called the Golden Age of Athens, roughly spanning the 5th century BCE, a time when art, philosophy, architecture, and democracy reached heights that would resonate through history. Imagine a city alive with energy, creativity, and confidence, its citizens dreaming not only of survival, but of perfection in mind, body, and spirit. The Golden Age began under the leadership of Pericles, a statesman whose vision transformed Athens. He encouraged public works, strengthened democracy, and promoted the arts. Athens became a city where citizens were not only soldiers or farmers, but participants in civic life and patrons of culture. The Acropolis, long sacred hill, was rebuilt with magnificent temples and statues, crowning the city with splendor that celebrated both the gods and human achievement. The Parthenon, dedicated to Athena, was the crowning jewel of this era. Imagine its gleaming marble columns, bathed in sunlight, intricate friezes depicting mythic battles and civic pride, and statues that seemed almost alive. The Parthenon was more than a temple. It was a symbol of Athens' devotion, creativity, and mastery over both art and engineering. Nearby, other structures, theaters, and public spaces grew, shaping a cityscape that would inspire architects and artists for millennia. Athens was also a city of democracy, a living experiment in civic participation. Citizens gathered in the assembly, debated policies, and voted on matters affecting the polis. Though limited to free adult males, this participation was revolutionary for its time. Ordinary Athenians could speak, argue, and influence decisions, creating a sense of shared responsibility and engagement that energized the city. The ideas born in these gatherings would echo in political thought for centuries. Art and drama flourished. Playwrights such as Aeschylus, Sophocles, and Euripides brought myths and moral dilemmas to life on stage. Their tragedies explored human emotion, divine will, and the consequences of hubris. Comedy, led by Aristophanes, provided laughter, satire, and social critique, reflecting the pulse of civic life. Festivals like the Dionysia became communal celebrations, blending devotion, entertainment, and civic identity. Philosophy, too, found its home in Athens. Thinkers, like Socrates, walked the streets and marketplaces, questioning assumptions and seeking truth. His method of inquiry encouraged debate, self-reflection, and critical thinking, laying the groundwork for generations of philosophers. Later, Plato and Aristotle would expand these ideas, but in Athens, the seeds of rational thought, ethics, and political philosophy first blossomed. Science and mathematics were also nurtured. Scholars studied astronomy, medicine, geometry, and logic. They sought to understand the world not only through myth, but through observation, reasoning, and experiment. This curiosity and pursuit of knowledge became a defining feature of Athenian identity, blending intellect with imagination. Trade and wealth further fueled the Golden Age. Athens' navy, strengthened after the Persian Wars, ensured safe seas for merchants. Olive oil, wine, pottery, and silver were traded across the Mediterranean. Wealth allowed Athens to sponsor public projects, temples, and festivals, supporting artists, thinkers, and builders. The city thrived as a center of commerce, culture, and ideas. Yet Athens' brilliance was not without tension. Its democracy coexisted with inequalities and the realities of slavery. Its wealth and pride sometimes fueled ambition and conflict. Nevertheless, the Golden Age represents a remarkable achievement, a city that balanced civic engagement, art, philosophy, and strategy, creating a culture that shaped the Western world. Let us imagine a day in Golden Age Athens. The morning sun rises over the Acropolis, illuminating the Parthenon's gleaming columns. Citizens gather in the agora, merchants display wares, philosophers debate, children play, and artisans work in stone and bronze. The air carries the scent of the sea, of flowers, and of fresh bread. Music drifts from homes and theaters, mingling with voices, footsteps, and laughter. The city pulses with life, beauty, and purpose. The Golden Age also strengthened Athens' identity In Greece, its navy protected the Delian League, a coalition of allied city-states. Athens became a cultural and political leader, its achievements inspiring admiration and envy alike. Though the Peloponnesian War would later challenge its dominance, the accomplishments of this era, architecture, art, philosophy, drama, and democracy, would endure far beyond the rise and fall of empires. As you drift deeper into relaxation, picture Athens not just as a city, but as an idea, a place where human creativity, civic responsibility, and devotion to beauty and knowledge intertwine. Hear the voices of citizens debating in the agora, the chants of priests at the temples, the music from distant theaters. Feel the warmth of sunlight on marble steps, the rhythm of waves along the shore, and the quiet hum of a city at its peak. The golden age of Athens reminds us that human potential is vast, that a society can strive for both wisdom and beauty, and that the collective efforts of citizens can create a legacy that endures for millennia. It is a lesson not just in history, but in the quiet power of imagination, dedication, and community. Dear friend, after the brilliance of Athens' golden age, Greece found itself divided once more. For decades, Athens had flourished, its navy commanding the seas, its culture inspiring admiration across the Greek world. Yet, other city-states, particularly Sparta, viewed Athens' growing power with suspicion and unease. The stage was set for a conflict that would engulf all of Greece. The Peloponnesian War, a struggle not against foreign invaders, but among Greeks themselves. This war, spanning from 431 to 404 BCE, was both political and moral, a confrontation of ideals as well as armies. Athens, with its democracy and naval strength, faced Sparta, a society rooted in discipline and military excellence. Allies were drawn in, cities divided in loyalty, and the Greek world became a stage for long and devastating battles. The war began with smaller conflicts and border disputes, but soon escalated. Sparta, supported by its Peloponnesian allies, relied on its formidable land army, trained and disciplined to perfection. Athens, knowing it could not match Sparta on land, relied on its navy, its walls, and its wealth to sustain itself. The strategy of each polis reflected its character. Sparta trusted in endurance, Athens in ingenuity and resources. One of the earliest and most famous strategies of Athens was to retreat behind its walls, letting its strong navy supply the city and strike at coastal enemies. This created a tense and anxious life for Athenians. The plague of 430 BCE swept through the crowded city, claiming tens of thousands, including the great leader Pericles. Imagine the fear, the quiet sorrow, the resilience of a people who faced death, yet continued to hold their city together. Even in suffering, Athens showed remarkable endurance, finding courage in civic duty and shared identity. The war unfolded across land and sea, from the plains of central Greece to the islands of the Aegean. Battles like Pylos and Sphacteria showcased the ingenuity of the Athenians, while Spartan discipline brought victories at Delium and other sites. The conflict was long, draining, and relentless. Cities were sacked, alliances shifted, and trust eroded. Families and friends found themselves on opposite sides. The war revealed both the strengths and vulnerabilities of the Greek world. bravery, skill, and unity, but also ambition, jealousy, and exhaustion. In 415 BCE, Athens launched the ill-fated Sicilian expedition, aiming to expand influence and secure resources. Yet the venture ended in disaster, with the Athenian fleet destroyed and thousands lost. The city's confidence was shaken, and its enemies sensed weakness. Sparta, aided by Persian funds, built a navy capable of challenging Athens at sea, a reversal of the balance of power that had persisted since the Persian Wars. Finally, after nearly 3 decades of conflict, Athens surrendered in 404 BCE. Its walls were torn down, its fleet diminished, and its empire dissolved. Sparta emerged victorious, but the cost to all of Greece was immense. Economies were shattered, populations weakened, and the social fabric of the polis strained under the weight of war. Athens, once radiant, now faced a period of humiliation and reflection. Yet even in defeat, lessons endured. The Peloponnesian War revealed the fragility of power, the importance of alliances, and the consequences of ambition unchecked by prudence. It highlighted human courage and folly, the beauty of civic participation, and the danger of division. Cities learned that greatness could rise and fall, but that culture, ideas, and knowledge might survive beyond the battlefield. Imagine the aftermath. The Aegean coastline is quiet. Farmers return to fields ravaged by armies. Families mourn lost children, lost brothers, lost friends. Ships sit idle in harbors, once the symbols of power and reach. The streets of Athens, usually bustling, are subdued. Yet in the quiet, poets write, philosophers contemplate, and the seeds of renewal begin to germinate. Even in ruin, the spirit of Greece endures. The Peloponnesian War also shaped future generations. It forced reflection on leadership, justice, and the responsibilities of citizens. Figures like Thucydides, chronicling the events with remarkable insight, taught lessons in history, politics, and human nature that still resonate today. The war became not just a memory of conflict, but a meditation on the strengths and weaknesses of human societies. As you drift deeper into calm, imagine walking through the empty streets of post-war Athens. Feel the quiet wind against marble columns, the distant cry of gulls over the harbor, and the soft murmur of citizens rebuilding their lives. The city is battered, yet alive. The stories of courage, ingenuity, and reflection float in the air, mingling with the scent of olive groves and the rhythm of waves. History is alive in the silence, teaching, reminding, and inspiring. The Peloponnesian War reminds us, dear friend, that even the mightiest cities face trials. That division can weaken even the strongest, and that the human spirit, though tested, has the capacity to endure, learn, and grow. Dear friend, as the dust of the Peloponnesian War settled across Greece, the once independent city-states found themselves weakened, weary, and divided. Sparta had won, Athens had lost, yet no city could claim dominance for long. It was in this fragile moment that a new power began to rise in the north, the kingdom of Macedon, a land of rugged mountains, fertile valleys, and proud warriors. Macedon had long been on the periphery of Greek consciousness, often seen as semi-barbaric by the southern polis. Yet its kings were ambitious and its people resilient. By the 4th century BCE, the stage was set for a transformation that would reshape Greece forever. At the center of this transformation stood Philip II, a man of extraordinary vision, cunning, and military genius. Philip ascended the throne in 359 BCE, inheriting a kingdom threatened by neighboring tribes and internal instability. Imagine him as a young ruler, sharp-eyed and calculating, walking through the forests and plains of Macedon, observing his people, his soldiers, and the terrain. He understood that survival and expansion required both diplomacy and innovation. He began by reorganizing the Macedonian army, creating a force that was disciplined, versatile, and formidable. One of Philip's most significant military innovations was the sarissa, a long spear over 6 meters in length, wielded in the phalanx formation. Picture rows of soldiers, shields overlapping, spears thrust forward like a bristling forest of iron, advancing with precision and unity. This new phalanx combined mobility, coordination, and overwhelming reach, giving Macedon an advantage over the traditional Greek hoplites. Philip also developed combined arms tactics, integrating cavalry and infantry in coordinated maneuvers, anticipating strategies that would later be used by his son, Alexander. But Philip was not only a military genius, he was a master of diplomacy. He forged alliances through marriage, persuasion, and sometimes intimidation. Cities that had once fought each other now found themselves under Macedonian influence, bound together by treaties and strategic marriages. He carefully balanced coercion and incentive, creating loyalty without relying solely on conquest. The Greek city-states, still recovering from decades of warfare, were often unable to resist. Athens and Thebes, wary and weakened, occasionally challenged him, but Philip's combination of military strength, strategic alliances, and political cunning allowed Macedon to steadily expand its influence. By 338 BCE, at the Battle of Chaeronea, Philip decisively defeated the allied forces of Athens and Thebes, securing Macedonian dominance over Greece. The city-states retained their internal governments, but now recognized Philip's authority, ushering in a new era of unity under Macedonian hegemony. Philip also understood the importance of culture and perception. He presented himself not only as a king and warrior, but as a patron of Hellenic identity. He respected Greek traditions, participated in pan-Hellenic festivals, and positioned Macedon as a legitimate participant in the world of southern Greece. By blending power with cultural diplomacy, Philip created a foundation that would be inherited and expanded by his son, Alexander. This rise of Macedon marked a turning point in Greek history. For centuries, the Greek city-states had been independent, sometimes fiercely competitive, often divided by pride and rivalry. Philip's vision of a unified Greece under Macedonian leadership brought an unprecedented level of cohesion, preparing the way for campaigns that would extend Greek influence far beyond the Mediterranean. Imagine now, dear friend, the Macedonian plains at dawn. Soldiers drill with long sarissas, their spears glinting in the morning sun. Horses paw the ground, cavalrymen ready for maneuvers. Philip surveys his army with quiet confidence, his mind calculating strategies, alliances, and the next step toward unifying Greece. Villages awaken in the distance, markets begin to stir, and the scent of pine and earth fills the crisp air. Every detail, from the disciplined phalanx to the alliances in city-states, reflects Philip's meticulous planning and vision. Philip's legacy is a reminder that leadership combines vision, strategy, and the ability to inspire both loyalty and fear. He reshaped the political landscape, strengthened his kingdom, and prepared the way for one of the most remarkable figures in human history, his son, Alexander the Great. Macedon under Philip became a bridge between the fragmented, war-weary Greek city-states and the expansive, unified world that Alexander would soon create. As you drift deeper into relaxation, picture the Macedonian army, disciplined and ready, the mountains and rivers of the north stretching beyond the horizon. Think of Philip, a king and strategist, shaping the destiny of an entire culture, guiding it from division toward unity. The rhythms of strategy, training, and diplomacy echo quietly like a heartbeat across the land, a reminder that even in times of turmoil, vision and persistence can reshape the world. The rise of Macedon and Philip II sets the stage for the next chapter in Greek history, where ambition, courage, and intellect combine to push the boundaries of human achievement. Dear friend, as Philip II secured Macedonian dominance over Greece, a young prince named Alexander emerged, destined to alter the course of history. Born in 356 BCE in the palace of Pella, Alexander was tutored by none other than Aristotle, learning philosophy, science, and the art of leadership. Even as a child, he exhibited intelligence, courage, and ambition, qualities that would define his life. When Philip was assassinated in 336 BCE, Alexander ascended the throne at the age of just 20. Greece was united, Macedon was powerful, and the world beyond awaited a leader with vision. Alexander's ambition was immense, yet precise. His gaze turned eastward toward Persia, the empire that had long loomed as the dominant power across the Aegean. Imagine Alexander standing on a hilltop, looking toward the horizon, imagining a world united under Hellenic influence, the sun glinting off rivers and mountains, his mind calculating the impossible. In 334 BCE, Alexander crossed the Hellespont into Asia Minor with a carefully trained army, disciplined, loyal, and hungry for glory. His forces were compact compared to the Persian army, yet their skill, cohesion, and leadership gave them the edge. The first major engagement at the Battle of Granicus set the tone. Alexander personally led charges, inspiring his men with courage and decisiveness. Persian forces were defeated, and Greek cities in Asia Minor began to recognize Alexander as both liberator and conqueror. From there, Alexander advanced through Anatolia, Syria, and Phoenicia, capturing cities, securing ports, and winning both admiration and fear. He respected local customs and gods, blending diplomacy with conquest, ensuring stability in newly captured lands. The great city of Tyre was taken after a long siege, demonstrating not only military skill, but relentless determination. Imagine the sound of battering rams against walls, the shimmer of bronze shields in sunlight, and Alexander himself moving among his troops, exuding charisma and leadership. In 333 BCE, the legendary Battle of Issus brought Alexander face to face with Darius III, the Persian king. Though outnumbered, Alexander's strategy and the discipline of his phalanx and cavalry prevailed. Darius fled, leaving his family behind, and Alexander treated them with respect, further enhancing his reputation as both warrior and statesman. With each victory, the legend of Alexander grew, not merely as a conqueror, but as a visionary capable of reshaping cultures. Over the next years, Alexander pressed further into Persia, capturing Susa, Persepolis, and the heartlands of the empire. He adopted elements of Persian culture, encouraging marriages between his soldiers and local women, integrating administrators, and honoring the gods of conquered peoples. His goal was not only to defeat, but to unify, to create a Hellenistic world where Greek and Eastern traditions could coexist. The campaigns stretched ever eastward. Alexander crossed the Tigris and Euphrates, then the mountains of Afghanistan, the deserts of Bactria, and finally reached the Indian subcontinent. Each battle tested his leadership, his logistics, and the endurance of his army. Yet he pressed on, driven by vision, curiosity, and the desire for glory. Along the way, cities were founded, Alexandria in Egypt, and dozens of others bearing his name, spreading Greek culture, language, and ideas across continents. Alexander's conquests did not merely change politics, they reshaped culture. Greek architecture, language, and learning spread into Asia, mingling with Persian, Egyptian, and Indian traditions. Science, art, and philosophy flourished in this Hellenistic world, creating a legacy of blended knowledge and cosmopolitan culture. Trade routes expanded, cities grew, and ideas flowed across regions in ways never seen before. Yet, Alexander's life was brief. In 323 BCE, at the age of 32, he died in Babylon, his body a symbol of ambition, realized yet unfinished. His empire, vast and multi-ethnic, was divided among his generals, the Diadochi, but the cultural and historical impact endured. Greek influence had reached from the Mediterranean to the Indus River, setting the stage for the centuries of interaction between East and West. Imagine now, dear friend, the sweep of Alexander's world. Armies marching across deserts and mountains, ships gliding along rivers, cities rising in deserts and along coasts. The sun glints off marble temples in newly founded cities. Scholars and artists contemplate Greek philosophy in distant lands, and traders carry goods and ideas along dusty roads. Alexander, mounted on Bucephalus, looks out over a horizon that seems endless, a vision of unity, ambition, and exploration stretching beyond the human eye. Alexander's life teaches lessons about courage, vision, and the power of ambition, tempered by intelligence and respect. Though mortal, his legacy echoes in the cities he founded, the cultures he blended, and the ideals of leadership and curiosity he embodied. The world he shaped became a bridge, connecting continents, peoples, and ideas in ways that would influence generations to come. As you drift deeper into calm, picture the gentle sway of campfires across the plains of Asia, the soft murmur of soldiers speaking of home and victory, the distant hum of cities rising in deserts and river valleys. The world is vast, yet interconnected, full of movement, discovery, and the quiet pulse of human endeavor. Alexander's story, like the gentle rhythm of the waves, continues to flow across time, reminding us of the breadth of human ambition and imagination. Dear friend, as Alexander the Great's life drew to a close in 323 BCE, the empire he had forged did not vanish, but transformed. His sudden death left a vast realm stretching from Greece to Egypt and deep into Asia, a territory without a single ruler to guide it. From this uncertainty emerged the Hellenistic Era, a period marked not by one dominant city or king, but by a world interconnected through culture, trade, philosophy, and discovery. The generals of Alexander, known as the Diadochi, divided the empire into several kingdoms, each ruled by a strong leader. Ptolemy took Egypt, Seleucus claimed much of the east, and Antigonus and Lysimachus held territories in Macedonia and Asia Minor. Though political unity was lost, the spread of Greek culture, language, art, philosophy, and institutions continued with remarkable vigor. Greek ideas mingled with local customs, creating societies that were cosmopolitan, innovative, and interconnected. One of the most striking features of this era was the blending of cultures. Greek, Egyptian, Persian, and Indian traditions converged, influencing religion, art, architecture, and governance. Temples and theaters rose in distant lands, markets bustled with merchants from across continents, and scholars exchanged ideas about the cosmos, mathematics, and medicine. Cities like Alexandria in Egypt became cultural beacons, with vast libraries, observatories, and schools where knowledge of the ancient world was preserved and expanded. Science and philosophy flourished. Thinkers like Euclid studied geometry, developing principles that would guide mathematicians for centuries. Archimedes explored physics, levers, and pulleys, discovering truths about the natural world. Astronomers like Aristarchus proposed heliocentric ideas, imagining the sun at the center of the cosmos, while physicians like Hippocrates' successors advanced medicine through observation and reasoning. Knowledge became portable, shared across cities, and integrated with local traditions, creating a rich tapestry of learning. Art and architecture also transformed. Sculptors sought realism, capturing emotion, movement, and individuality in their work. Temples, statues, and monuments reflected both Greek aesthetic ideals and local influences, blending marble and stone in intricate designs. Theater continued to thrive, with tragedies and comedies performed for diverse audiences, exploring universal themes of love, ambition, and human experience. Trade expanded like never before. Roads, rivers, and ports connected distant regions, facilitating the movement of goods, ideas, and people. Merchants carried spices, textiles, metals, and pottery, while philosophers, artists, and engineers traveled alongside them, sharing knowledge and culture. The Hellenistic world was vibrant, dynamic, and expansive, a network stretching from the Mediterranean to the Indus River, where Greek influence touched every corner of daily life. Politics remained complex. Kings and generals often fought, alliances shifted, and wars erupted. Yet these struggles coexisted with remarkable cultural growth. Cities were centers of innovation, while monarchs patronized art, science, and architecture to legitimize their rule. Even in conflict, creativity and intellect thrived, proving that human achievement can flourish amid uncertainty. religion also adapted. Greek gods were worshipped alongside local deities, often merging attributes and ceremonies. Mystery religions, philosophical cults, and syncretic practices emerged, offering comfort, guidance, and identity in a changing world. Temples became not only places of worship, but centers of learning and community where philosophy and spirituality intertwined. Imagine walking through Alexandria at the height of the Hellenistic era. The sun glints off the harbor, where ships from distant lands dock, carrying goods and ideas alike. Merchants call out in many languages. Philosophers debate in shaded colonnades. Artists sculpt figures that capture emotion and beauty. The library, vast and quiet, holds scrolls from every known civilization, a treasury of human thought. The scent of spices, the hum of conversation, and the gentle rhythm of the Mediterranean waves mingle in the warm air. This era also influenced daily life. Citizens in Hellenistic cities enjoyed theaters, baths, marketplaces, and festivals. Education, athletics, and civic participation thrived in urban centers. Knowledge was valued not only for its practical applications, but for its ability to elevate thought, inspire creativity, and connect people across distances. The Hellenistic era represents the diffusion of Greek culture far beyond its original homeland. While the classical city-states of Greece had focused on local identity and independence, this era demonstrated how ideas, art, science, and philosophy could travel, adapt, and thrive across continents. It was a time of exploration, not only of lands and seas, but of the human mind, imagination, and spirit. As you drift deeper into calm, picture the gentle movement of scholars through marble halls, the soft lapping of waves on Alexandria's docks, and the quiet contemplation of citizens in gardens and temples. Imagine ideas traveling like whispers across continents, merging, evolving, and leaving traces in every city, every school, and every marketplace. The Hellenistic era was a symphony of human curiosity, ambition, and creativity, a reminder that knowledge and culture can endure and expand beyond borders and generations. This era, dear friend, shows us that even after conquest, even after upheaval, humanity can build, create, and connect. Greek influence spread farther than soldiers could march, shaping science, philosophy, art, and culture for centuries. The echoes of this age remind us that curiosity, creativity, and shared learning are timeless, and that the human spirit can flourish even in a world of change. Dear friend, as we journey through the Hellenistic era, we find that the power of Greece was not only in armies, politics, or cities, but in the quiet, enduring brilliance of the mind. From the earliest philosophers to the scholars of Hellenistic Alexandria, Greek thinkers sought to understand the world, nature, and humanity itself. This is the story of Greek science, philosophy, and mathematics, a legacy of curiosity and reason that still guides thought today. The roots of Greek thought stretch back to the 6th century BCE, when pre-Socratic philosophers began to question the nature of existence. Imagine Thales gazing at the night sky or the calm waters of the Aegean, wondering what underlies all things. His idea that water might be the fundamental substance of life was a radical shift from myth to reason. Across Ionia, thinkers like Anaximander and Anaximenes proposed theories of the cosmos, the earth, and life itself, seeking natural explanations for phenomena that had previously been attributed solely to gods. Philosophy soon expanded into questions of ethics, politics, and knowledge. Socrates, walking the streets of Athens, asked probing questions of citizens, challenging assumptions and encouraging reflection. He believed that self-knowledge and reason were the keys to a virtuous life. His method, the Socratic dialogue, used gentle questioning to guide understanding, a practice still echoed in education today. Imagine him quietly strolling the agora, engaging in calm, thoughtful conversation as the city hums around him. Socrates, student Plato, envisioned ideal forms, pondering justice, beauty, and the nature of reality. In his academy, students learned mathematics, philosophy, and governance, preparing for lives of contemplation and leadership. Plato's dialogues, often featuring Socrates as a character, explored morality, politics, and knowledge itself, laying foundations for Western philosophy. Plato's student, Aristotle, expanded philosophy into observation and classification. He studied biology, physics, ethics, politics, and logic. His systematic approach sought to understand the natural world and human behavior with precision and clarity. Walk with Aristotle through Lyceum gardens, observing plants, animals, and students. Feel the calm rhythm of inquiry, of questions leading to answers, and answers prompting further curiosity. Mathematics, too, flourished. Pythagoras explored numbers, patterns, and harmonics, connecting mathematics to music, geometry, and the cosmos. His ideas inspired generations of thinkers to seek structure, order, and beauty in the universe. Euclid, in Hellenistic Alexandria, codified geometry in ways still taught today, a testament to the power of human logic and reasoning. Archimedes of Syracuse investigated levers, pulleys, buoyancy, and the nature of spheres and cylinders, demonstrating that the physical world could be understood through careful thought and observation. Astronomy advanced as well. Aristarchus proposed a heliocentric model, imagining the sun at the center of the cosmos. Hipparchus, and later Ptolemy, charted stars, calculated eclipses, and sought to predict celestial movement. Greek scholars combined observation, theory, and mathematics to reach conclusions that would guide explorers, navigators, and scientists for centuries. Medicine and biology also evolved. Physicians in the tradition of Hippocrates and his successors emphasized observation, diagnosis, and ethical care. Illness was studied as a natural phenomenon, not simply as divine punishment. The Hippocratic approach laid the groundwork for systematic medical practice, emphasizing careful study, patience, and the humanity of healing. The Hellenistic world, particularly cities like Alexandria, became centers of learning. The Library of Alexandria housed thousands of scrolls from across the known world. Scholars studied, debated, and shared ideas across cultures. Mathematics, philosophy, astronomy, medicine, and literature were all nurtured in this vibrant intellectual environment. Picture scholars walking along colonnades, scrolls in hand, discussing the motions of stars, or the principles of ethics, while the Mediterranean breeze whispers through shaded courtyards. Greek science and philosophy remind us that knowledge begins with curiosity, observation, and reflection. It demonstrates the power of asking questions, challenging assumptions, and seeking understanding. Even as empires rise and fall, these ideas endure, echoing across centuries and continents. As you drift deeper into calm, imagine the quiet rhythm of a Hellenistic classroom or library, the soft murmur of conversation, the turning of scrolls, the gentle scratching of styluses on parchment. The sun glints off marble statues, the scent of herbs and ink fills the air, and every thought contributes to the growing understanding of the world. Greek minds, patient, curious, and imaginative, illuminate the path of human discovery. This section shows us that while battles and empires shape history, the mind shapes civilization. Greek science, philosophy, and mathematics offer a legacy of inquiry, patience, and wonder, a gift that continues to guide, inspire, and soothe. Dear friend, as we continue our journey through the tapestry of Greek history, we now turn our gaze to the world of art and architecture, where stone, marble, and imagination converge to create beauty that endures across millennia. Greek creativity was not merely decorative, it reflected ideals, values, and aspirations, shaping how people saw themselves, their gods, and the world around them. From the earliest times, Greek communities sought to honor their gods, heroes, and leaders through structures and sculptures. The temple became the central expression of this devotion, designed not only for ritual, but as a reflection of order, balance, and harmony. Each column, each frieze, each step of the structure was deliberate, embodying principles that spoke to both the physical and the spiritual world. The Doric, Ionic, and Corinthian orders, distinct architectural styles, emerged to define aesthetics across the Greek world. Doric columns, sturdy and simple, reflected strength and resilience. Ionic columns, taller and more elegant, spoke of grace and proportion. Corinthian columns, adorned with acanthus leaves, celebrated intricacy and refinement. Walk through a Greek temple in your imagination, sunlight glinting on marble, shadows shifting across fluted columns, the gentle wind carrying the scent of flowers and incense, while the city hums quietly in the background. Sculpture was equally transformative. Early works were stylized and symbolic, but over time, Greek sculptors pursued realism, capturing the human form with remarkable accuracy. Muscles, posture, and expression conveyed both physical perfection and inner emotion. Imagine the statues of Critios Boy or Discobolus, frozen in time, yet alive with movement and balance. Each piece tells a story, evokes an ideal, and inspires reflection on the beauty and potential of humanity. Greek artists also adorned pottery, reliefs, and coins with intricate designs. Scenes from mythology, daily life, and heroic exploits were painted in black figure or red figure techniques, allowing stories to travel visually across homes, temples, and marketplaces. These objects were both functional and artistic, blending utility with beauty and connecting every household to the larger cultural and mythological world. Architecture extended beyond temples. Public spaces such as the agora, Theaters, stoas, and gymnasiums were carefully designed to foster civic engagement, learning, and physical activity. Theaters, open to the sky, used acoustics and stone design to allow every voice and every sound to reach the audience. Imagine watching a play in Epidaurus, the gentle sunlight fading into dusk, actors moving gracefully across the stage, and every whisper, every laugh, echoing perfectly through the amphitheater. Hellenistic art and architecture continued to evolve, embracing emotion, drama, and complexity. Sculptures like the Laocoon group captured tension, struggle, and movement, blending realism with storytelling. Cities built monumental structures, grand staircases, and ornate temples that reflected both civic pride and the blending of Greek and local influences across Egypt, Asia, and the Mediterranean. Greek art and architecture were deeply connected to philosophy and mathematics. Proportions, symmetry, and harmony were not merely aesthetic choices, they reflected ideals of order, balance, and cosmic understanding. The golden ratio, studied and applied by Greek architects and artists, illustrates the pursuit of perfection in both structure and design. Every curve, every step, every column was imbued with purpose, reflecting the harmony of the universe itself. Imagine walking through Athens, standing at the foot of the Parthenon on the Acropolis. The sun warms the marble, shadows stretch across carved friezes, depicting gods, humans, and heroes. The city spreads below, the distant sound of the sea mingling with the quiet murmurs of citizens. Every step, every glance evokes a sense of balance, beauty, and the enduring power of human creativity. Greek art and architecture remind us that beauty is both a reflection and a guide. It embodies ideals of harmony, proportion, and aspiration. It connects humanity to the divine, to civic identity, and to the deeper rhythms of life itself. Sculptures, temples, and monuments endure not only as objects, but as ideas, whispering across centuries about balance, courage, and imagination. As you drift deeper into calm, picture yourself wandering through marble halls, ancient theaters, and sunlit temples. Feel the smooth stone beneath your fingertips, the gentle warmth of sunlight, and the quiet strength of art and architecture that has survived wars, earthquakes, and time itself. Greek creativity, patient and meticulous, continues to speak to the human heart, inviting reflection, serenity, and wonder. Dear friend, as we continue our journey through the vast expanse of Greek history, we now enter a world where the divine and the mortal intertwine, the realm of Greek religion and mythology. The gods of Greece were not distant abstractions, but vivid, passionate beings whose stories shaped the lives, values, and imaginations of ordinary citizens. Every temple, festival, and ritual carried whispers of myth, connecting humans to a universe alive with mystery, power, and narrative. Greek mythology begins in the earliest moments of the world, as told by poets like Hesiod and Homer. In these stories, the cosmos emerges from chaos, giving birth to primordial beings like Gaia, the earth, and Uranus, the sky. From their union came the Titans, and from the Titans, the Olympian gods, powerful yet deeply human in their desires, rivalries, and emotions. Imagine the heavens above Mount Olympus, shimmering with the presence of deities whose laughter, anger, and love influence the lives of men and women below. The Olympian gods, Zeus, Hera, Athena, Apollo, Artemis, Aphrodite, and others, embodied human traits magnified through divine power. Zeus, the thunderer, governed justice and order. Hera, his queen, presided over marriage and family. Athena inspired wisdom, strategy, and the arts. Each god and goddess had a distinct personality, domain, and narrative, often interacting with mortals to reward, test, or punish. These stories were not merely entertainment, they conveyed values, cautions, and ideals, guiding Greek society and offering lessons about human behavior and the nature of the cosmos. Heroes bridged the mortal and divine realms. Figures like Heracles, Perseus, and Theseus undertook dangerous quests, overcoming monsters, divine obstacles, and their own limitations. Imagine Heracles wrestling the Nemean lion, its fur impervious to weapons, muscles straining in the golden sun, his courage unwavering. Through these heroic tales, Greeks explored themes of bravery, perseverance, and the eternal struggle between human will and fate. The myths were reflected in daily life through rituals, festivals, and temples. The Panathenea celebrated Athena with processions, music, and athletic competitions, while the Eleusinian mysteries honored Demeter and Persephone, symbolizing life, death, and the cycles of nature. Temples, adorned with intricate sculptures and friezes, became focal points of civic identity, devotion, and cultural pride. Each stone, column, and carving carried layers of meaning, connecting citizens to divine narratives and communal memory. Oracles and prophecy also played a central role. The Oracle of Delphi, dedicated to Apollo, was revered across Greece. Pilgrims traveled great distances to seek guidance, answers to questions of fate, politics, and personal life. Imagine the hushed whispers within the temple, the flicker of candlelight, and the priestess delivering cryptic truths that would shape decisions, alliances, and journeys. The Greeks understood that the divine was present not only in triumphs and disasters, but in the quiet, subtle rhythms of everyday existence. Mythology was also intertwined with nature and the environment. Rivers, mountains, trees, and animals were often sacred, inhabited by nymphs, spirits, and minor deities. The natural world itself became a canvas for storytelling, moral reflection, and ritual practice. To walk through a grove, climb a hill, or gaze across the sea was to enter a living myth where the divine might whisper in the rustle of leaves, the crash of waves, or the flight of birds. Greek religion and mythology were not rigid, they were living, evolving traditions. Different city-states emphasized particular gods, festivals, or stories, reflecting local identity, geography, and history. Athens honored Athena, Delphi honored Apollo, Crete preserved tales of the Minotaur and labyrinths, while Eleusis focused on Demeter and the sacred mysteries of life and death. The richness of these narratives allowed citizens to connect with the divine in ways that were personal, communal, and profound. As you drift deeper into calm, imagine a Greek temple at dusk. The air carries the scent of incense and olive oil. Citizens move quietly, offering prayers, songs, or small gifts. In the distance, hills rise into the fading light, and the sound of a river hums softly through the valley. The stories of gods, heroes, and monsters drift in the air like gentle music, filling minds with wonder and imagination. Every myth is a lesson, a dream, a reflection of human life, mirrored in divine drama. Greek religion and mythology remind us that humans have always sought to explain, honor, and explore the world around them. Through these narratives, the Greeks expressed fears, joys, ambitions, and ethics. They wove meaning into every stone, every festival, and every story, creating a tapestry that continues to inspire, teach, and soothe. Let the gods of Greece, their heroes, and their myths drift gently through your thoughts. Hear their laughter, feel their presence in the rustle of leaves and waves, and sense the eternal dialogue between mortal and divine. These stories, ancient yet alive, carry a timeless message. Life is a journey of wonder, courage, and connection, a narrative shared across generations, echoing softly into the night. Dear friend, as we continue our journey through Greek history, we now enter a world where words, stories, and performance breathe life into culture, the realm of Greek literature and drama. For the Greeks, storytelling was both entertainment and education, a mirror reflecting human nature, society, and the divine. Poetry, epic, and theater intertwined with daily life, shaping the way people thought, felt, and dreamed. Greek literature begins with the epic poems of Homer, whose Iliad and Odyssey remain timeless explorations of heroism, fate, and the human condition. Imagine warriors on the plains of Troy, shields glinting in the sun, spears clashing, and honor and courage measured in every deed. In the Odyssey, picture Odysseus drifting across unknown seas, facing monsters, gods, and the tests of his own mind, seeking home and understanding. These epics were recited aloud, weaving rhythm, music, and narrative into the minds of listeners, creating shared memory and collective imagination. Beyond Homer, Hesiod explored creation, divine law, and practical life in works like Theogony and Works and Days. His words traced the genealogy of gods, the origin of the cosmos, and the responsibilities of humans in society. Hesiod's writings combined philosophy, instruction, and poetry, offering both guidance and reflection. The rhythm of his verses carried listeners into contemplation, blending myth, morality, and everyday wisdom. Greek drama emerged as a natural extension of storytelling. Tragedy and comedy were performed in open-air theaters, often as part of religious festivals. Tragic playwrights like Aeschylus, Sophocles, and Euripides explored profound themes: fate, justice, hubris, and the consequences of human choices. In Oedipus Rex, we witness the tension of destiny and the fragility of human understanding. In Medea, passion, vengeance, and grief unfold with intensity and emotional truth. Tragedy was not merely performance, it was a communal meditation on the human experience, a dialogue between the individual, society, and the divine. Comedy, on the other hand, provided laughter, critique, and social commentary. Aristophanes used humor to address politics, war, and human folly, turning the theater into a space for reflection and amusement. Imagine citizens of Athens gathered in a sunlit theater, laughing at witty lines while contemplating the deeper truths behind satire. Humor, intellect, and observation blended seamlessly, engaging the audience in thought and emotion. Lyric poetry also flourished. Poets like Sappho and Pindar wrote about love, friendship, victory, and the beauty of life. Their verses were often accompanied by music, enhancing the rhythm and emotion of their words. Picture Sappho singing under the moonlight on the island of Lesbos, her words carrying the delicate balance of passion, longing, and serenity across the quiet waters. Poetry in Greece was not only art, it was a way to express the ineffable, to capture fleeting moments, and to connect hearts across time. Drama and literature were intertwined with civic identity. Festivals like the Dionysia honored Dionysus through performances, reinforcing social cohesion, spiritual reflection, and cultural pride. Citizens, regardless of status, participated as audience members, connecting with stories that resonated with their lives, hopes, and fears. Theater became a place of communal learning, emotional exploration, and aesthetic delight. Greek literature also explored philosophy, politics, and history. Thinkers like Herodotus and Thucydides wrote histories that blended narrative, analysis, and reflection. Herodotus, often called the father of history, wove tales of human adventure, culture, and conflict. Thucydides analyzed the Peloponnesian War, emphasizing cause, consequence, and human nature. These works bridged storytelling and investigation, creating records that were both instructive and immersive. Imagine a Greek city at sunset. Citizens gather in the theater. Scrolls are unrolled in private homes. The faint sound of lyres drifts across courtyards, and poets' words echo in the mind long after performance ends. The rhythm of language, the flow of narrative, and the emotional cadence of drama carry the listener on a journey through heroism, morality, and the intricacies of the human soul. Greek literature and drama remind us that stories are not merely entertainment, they are vessels of memory, emotion, and wisdom. They teach, question, and inspire, reflecting both the mortal and the divine. They allow us to experience courage, love, grief, and triumph across time and space, connecting us with generations of thinkers, performers, and dreamers. As you drift deeper into calm, imagine the soft murmurs of audiences, the gentle rustle of scrolls, and the quiet footsteps of actors moving across stone stages. Hear the rhythm of poetry, the rise and fall of dialogue, and the subtle music of words that carry truth, beauty, and human experience. Greek literature and drama are timeless companions, whispering softly across centuries, inviting reflection, imagination, and serene wonder. Dear friend, as we approach the final chapter of our journey through Greek history, it is time to reflect on the legacy of Greek civilization, from the earliest city-states to the expansive Hellenistic world. From epic poetry to monumental architecture, Greece left an imprint on the world that continues to resonate, shaping philosophy, politics, art, science, and culture across millennia. The Greeks were pioneers of democracy, and political thought. The experiments of Athens, where citizens gathered to debate, vote, and participate in governance, created principles that endure today. The ideas of equality before the law, civic responsibility, and public deliberation inspired political systems far beyond the Aegean. Even though not all citizens participated equally and slavery persisted, the very concept of shared governance was revolutionary, planting seeds that would blossom in modern democratic societies. Philosophy, too, became a lasting legacy. The questions raised by Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle continue to shape human thought. They asked, what is justice? What is the good life? How do we understand the world and our place within it? These inquiries, begun in the sunlit streets of Athens, echo in classrooms, debates, and personal reflection today. Greek philosophy laid the foundations for ethics, logic, and the scientific method, reminding us that curiosity and reason are essential to understanding life. Greek science and mathematics, developed by thinkers like Archimedes, Euclid, and Aristarchus, provided tools to measure, explain, and explore the natural world. Geometry, physics, astronomy, and medicine, refined over centuries, became cornerstones of human knowledge. Imagine the quiet work of these scholars, measuring, observing, calculating, and dreaming. Each discovery a step toward understanding the universe and our place within it. The Greeks also left a profound cultural and artistic legacy. Their sculpture, architecture, theater, and literature created models of beauty, harmony, and human expression that inspired countless generations. The Parthenon, the statues of gods and heroes, the tragedies and comedies of the theater, all these forms reflected ideals of proportion, balance, and emotional depth. Artists, architects, and writers across the world have drawn from these templates, blending inspiration from Greece into every age. Greek mythology and religion shaped storytelling, imagination, and moral reflection. The tales of gods and heroes provided a framework for exploring human virtues and flaws. Even as religions evolved, the themes of courage, hubris, fate, and redemption from Greek myths continued to inform literature, philosophy, and psychology. They remind us that stories are mirrors of the human soul, echoing desires, fears, and aspirations across generations. The Hellenistic era expanded Greek influence far beyond the Mediterranean through cities like Alexandria and Antioch. Trade, scholarship, and culture connected regions from Egypt to India. Greek language, science, and philosophy mingled with local traditions, creating a cosmopolitan world. This blending of cultures, known as Hellenism, illustrates the enduring power of ideas to transcend borders, shaping societies in ways both practical and profound. Greek education and literature nurtured critical thinking, storytelling, and civic awareness. The epics of Homer, the histories of Herodotus and Thucydides, and the poetry of Sappho and Pindar instilled values, preserved memory, and celebrated human experience. Through these texts, generations could connect with courage, love, loss, and triumph, experiencing both the past and timeless truths about life. Greek achievements in theater and drama shaped performance and narrative. Tragedy and comedy provided not only entertainment, but moral reflection and social critique. The rhythm of speech, the cadence of storytelling, and the exploration of human emotion in Greek drama laid the foundations for literature and performance arts across the world. Even centuries later, during the Renaissance and beyond, Greek ideas and aesthetics resurfaced, inspiring art, architecture, philosophy, and science in Europe and the wider world. Greek thinking became a bridge between antiquity and modernity, offering tools to reason, imagine, and create. Imagine now, dear friend, standing on a quiet hill overlooking the ancient ruins of Athens. The sun sets gently over the Acropolis, the marble glowing softly. The wind carries faint echoes of philosophers' debates, poets' verses, and citizens' voices from centuries past. The world is vast, yet connected by ideas, beauty, and human aspiration. Greek civilization endures not merely in stones and texts, but in the ways people think, dream, and create. The legacy of Greece teaches patience, curiosity, and reverence for both the human mind and spirit. It shows that even in small city-states, human ingenuity can flourish, inspiring future generations. The Greeks remind us that knowledge, art, governance, and imagination are eternal companions, capable of shaping civilizations and nurturing wonder. As you drift deeper into calm, picture the enduring spirit of Greece flowing across time through marble columns, scrolls, theaters, and ideas. Feel the quiet pulse of human achievement, the soft whisper of wisdom, and the gentle echo of creativity across millennia. Greek civilization, though ancient, lives on in thought, beauty, and the shared human journey. Now, with a smile on your face, you will have a good understanding of the entire Greek history and hopefully a good night's sleep. Goodbye, dear friend. See you next time.